What if I told you that the missing piece to Montreal's playoff puzzle is currently skating in Calgary, wearing the wrong jersey, and could be available for the right price? What if that piece isn't some unproven prospect or aging rental, but a battle-tested Stanley Cup champion who's proven he can thrive under the crushing pressure of a Canadian market? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're diving deep into what might be the most intriguing trade scenario of the 2025 season, a move that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of the Montreal Canadiens' rebuild and accelerate their return to playoff contention. The Montreal Canadiens exploded out of the gates this season with a blistering 5-2-0 record, dominating opponents on home ice and sending a clear message to the rest of the league. This isn't the same struggling franchise we've watched languish at the bottom of the standings. This team has bite. This team has skill. This team has something special brewing. But here's the uncomfortable truth that keeps general manager Kent Hughes up at night. Hot starts mean nothing if you can't sustain them. And sustainability requires depth, experience, and that intangible quality that separates pretenders from contenders, championship pedigree. Enter Nazem Kadri, the 35-year-old center currently plying his trade with the Calgary Flames, a franchise that appears to be teetering on the edge of a full-scale rebuild. As Montreal embarks on their West Coast road trip, beginning Wednesday night in Calgary, the hockey world should be watching this matchup through a different lens entirely. This isn't just another regular season game. This could be an audition, a chance for Canadiens brass to see up close what Kadri could bring to their organization. Let's talk specifics, because this isn't some pie-in-the-sky fantasy trade. This is real, it's achievable, and it addresses multiple needs simultaneously. During yesterday's post-game show on the Sick podcast, former NHLers Maxime Lapierre and Pierre Maguire broke down exactly why Kadri represents the ideal acquisition target for Montreal. Maguire, whose hockey acumen is respected throughout the league, painted a vivid picture. Imagine Kadri centering a second line flanked by Alex Newhook and the electrifying rookie Ivan Demidov. Think about that combination for a moment. The veteran savvy and two-way reliability of Kadri, combined with Newhook's speed and Demidov's otherworldly skill. That's not just a second line, that's a legitimate scoring threat that could rival any team's top six in the Eastern Conference. But Kadri brings far more than just on-ice production. He brings something Montreal desperately lacks: championship experience in a Canadian market. Currently, the Canadiens roster features exactly one player with a Stanley Cup ring, Alex Newhook, who won alongside Kadri in Colorado during their magical 2022 run. One player, one ring. That's not a championship-caliber locker room. That's a team still learning what it takes to win when everything is on the line. Kadri knows. He's been there. He's felt the weight of an entire nation's expectations pressing down on his shoulders during his years in Toronto. He's experienced the ultimate redemption arc, going from playoff villain to cup champion. That kind of mental fortitude, that ability to perform under suffocating pressure, you can't teach that. You can't develop it in the AHL. You acquire it by bringing in players who've already walked through the fire and emerged victorious. Let's get analytical for a moment, because emotional appeals only take you so far. Does Kadri's on-ice performance justify the acquisition cost? Coming off a 67-point campaign in 2024-25, during which he buried 35 goals, Kadri proved he's still got plenty left in the tank. That's not the production of a declining veteran hanging on for one last payday. That's legitimate top-six offensive output. He creates plays, he finishes plays, and he does it while playing a responsible 200-foot game. His face-off percentage sits at a career 48.7%, with last season's mark coming in at 46.2%. Now, those aren't elite numbers, but they're solid and respectable. Exactly what Montreal needs to shore up an area that's been frustratingly inconsistent. The Canadiens have struggled in the dot for years, and while Kadri won't single-handedly solve that problem, he certainly moves the needle in the right direction. But here's what the raw statistics can't fully capture. Kadri plays with an edge. He's physical. He's irritating to play against. Yes, that sandpaper style has earned him some playoff suspensions over the years, but it's also made him the type of competitor who elevates his game when the stakes are highest. Montreal's current roster, while talented and improving, could use more players willing to cross that line to play right on the edge of acceptable conduct. Playoff hockey rewards that mentality, and Kadri embodies it completely. Of course, no trade discussion is complete without addressing the elephant in the room: Kadri's contract. He's in year 4 of a 7-year deal carrying a $7 million cap hit, which isn't insignificant. But here's where Kent Hughes' reputation as a salary cap wizard comes into play. According to Puck Media, Montreal currently has approximately $5.1 million in available cap space. That's not quite enough to absorb Kadri's full contract, but it's close, and that's before any potential salary retention by Calgary. If the Flames commit to a rebuild, as increasingly seems inevitable, they'll have every incentive to move Kadri's contract and facilitate a deal. Retaining even 20 to 25% of his salary would make the math work beautifully for Montreal. Furthermore, Patrick Lane's $8.7 million cap hit comes off the books at season's end, providing Montreal with substantial long-term flexibility. This isn't a move that handcuffs the organization financially. It's a calculated risk with manageable downside and potentially enormous upside. What would Calgary demand in return? Maguire speculated that the asking price would likely center around 2 prospects and a draft pick, a reasonable request for a player of Kadri's caliber and experience. Montreal's prospect pool is deep enough to absorb such a cost without gutting their future. Obviously, untouchables like Michael Hage and Jacob Fowler would remain off the table. But beyond those elite prospects, Hughes should be willing to part with quality assets to make this happen. The Canadiens are no longer in the early stages of a rebuild where every prospect must be hoarded like precious treasure. They're approaching the inflection point where strategic additions of veteran talent can accelerate the timeline from promising young team to legitimate playoff contender. That's the phase Montreal finds itself in right now, and that's why this trade makes so much sense at this particular moment. Beyond statistics, contracts, and trade packages, there's something else worth considering: the message such an acquisition would send. By trading for Kadri, Kent Hughes would be declaring to his young core, to Nick Suzuki, to Cole Caulfield, to Lane Hudson, to Ivan Demidov, that management believes this group is ready to compete now, not in 2 years, not eventually. Now, that kind of organizational commitment can be galvanizing. It tells your best players that their window is opening, that the suffering through rebuilding years is ending, that the time to win is approaching. Young players feed off that energy, that sense of urgency and possibility. Kadri would also provide invaluable mentorship, particularly for someone like Demidov, who's navigating the enormous expectations that come with being a top prospect in Montreal. Having a veteran who's been through similar pressure, who knows how to handle the spotlight and the scrutiny, could prove invaluable to the young Russian's development. Now, to be fair, there are legitimate concerns about pursuing Kadri. He's 35 years old, which means you're acquiring him for what he can provide now and in the immediate future, not 5 years down the line. There's injury risk with any veteran player. His style of play, while effective, has occasionally crossed the line into suspendable territory at the worst possible times. But here's the thing: championship windows are narrow and unpredictable. If Montreal's young core is ready to compete, and their hot start suggests they might be, then waiting for the perfect trade target could mean missing the window entirely. Kadri isn't perfect, but he's available, he's proven, and he addresses multiple organizational needs simultaneously. Sometimes the best trade isn't the sexiest one, it's the one that's actually achievable and moves your team forward. Unless Sidney Crosby somehow becomes available. And let's be honest, that's pure fantasy. Nazem Kadri should be Kent Hughes' top trade priority. Period. Full stop. This isn't about mortgaging the future for a desperate playoff push. This is about intelligently adding a proven commodity to an ascending roster at a time when that addition could catalyze something special. The Canadiens have cap flexibility, prospect depth, and a young core that's ahead of schedule. The pieces are in place for Kent Hughes to be aggressive, to make a statement move that signals Montreal's return to relevance. As fans watch Wednesday night's game in Calgary, they should be imagining Kadri in the blue, blanc, et rouge. They should be picturing him taking key face-offs in tight playoff games, mentoring Ivan Demidov through his rookie season, and bringing that championship experience into a locker room that desperately needs it. The question isn't whether Kadri would help Montreal. The question is whether Kent Hughes has the courage to pull the trigger on a deal that could define his tenure as general manager. So, what do you think? Should the Canadiens go all in on Nazem Kadri, or are there better options out there we should be targeting? What would you be willing to give up to make this trade happen? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to hear your take on this. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Montreal's most intriguing trade possibility, smash that like button, and let's keep this conversation going. The Canadiens are building something special, and we're going to be here analyzing every move along the way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.